Dr. Tucker, it's fantastic to have you. Some really exciting news in your neck of the woods, we'll say. And I'm gonna step out. I'm gonna let you take it away and tell us what's going on.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I really appreciate that. And hi, everyone. Thanks for listening today. As Elliot said, I'm Dr. Joseph Tucker, the CEO of MagicMed. And I am going to jump straight into that first piece of news that Elliot referred to there. We did just announce less than 2 weeks ago now, signing a definitive agreement to be acquired by Enveric Bio. They are NASDAQ listed. Their ticker is ENVB. And we're really excited about it because we really think this is very much a transformative event for both companies. Now, MagicMed, we have been focused since inception in the psychedelics medicine space. I'll tell you about that in a moment. We've been focused really on the creation of new molecules, again, based on psychedelics, but designed to have better attributes and to take those molecules through the discovery and the preclinical, but we didn't have in-house our own clinical development capabilities. And that's where we're super excited now to be working with Enveric. So Enveric, they're in the cannabis space. Just like we were talking about, Elliot, we're in psychedelics, Enveric is in the cannabinoid space, and they're doing clinical trials. They don't have discovery. They do clinical trials all the way through new drug approval. So together, I think that's truly transformative. Now we have a complete end-to-end company from discovery all the way through clinical trials with psychedelics and cannabinoids and focused entirely on central nervous system diseases, disorders, and what we like to say, mind and body. So let me now jump in and I'll tell you a bit more about MagicMed specifically. We've been focused on the mental health market. This is, of course, a massive market, $250 billion spent every year just in North America trying to treat a variety of mental health challenges. And, this, of course, is very prevalent. Everybody's either had something or has somebody in their family or a close friend had some kind of challenge. We all are touched by this. But I think the really kind of scary, to me, the scary statistic is that when you ask people, how's the treatment going? Pretty much half say, it's not working. I need something better. And I think that has really laid the groundwork for the psychedelics, this new paradigm that's been so exciting, really kind of blown up in the last couple of years. It's because psychedelics seem to provide a new way of trying to treat, this ubiquitous mental health challenges that our society faces. So on the dollar side, you can see on the slide, north of 50 billion. 50 billion is being spent every year right now on drugs, but those drugs to treat psychedelics, those are pills you put in a bottle and you send home with a patient. And what's going on right now in the psychedelics sector mostly isn't that. It's mostly about, let's take these old molecules like LSD or magic mushrooms or ayahuasca. Let's take these old molecules and in an in-clinic setting, highly controlled setting, with a psychologist, psychotherapist to take you through the experience, let's administer to a patient like that. And while I think we all hope that that becomes a very potent, new paradigm, I think also everybody recognizes that you're not going to get to the largest number of patients with that kind of a setting, in part because of the very potent hallucinations that you have to experience going through that paradigm. Where the big opportunity is to get the most patients, and of course the biggest market, is to improve those psychedelics, make them more like the classic paradigm of pills in a bottle you can send home with a patient by muting the side effects and really just making them more amenable to daily use. So that is what MagicMed is focusing on. In order to make those modifications, those new molecules, we have to work with academic institutions because we need leading edge science, technology that doesn't even exist in big pharma, in the industry. You have to go to the academic institutions. We work very closely with the University of Calgary. Their biology department, their chemistry department, and their faculty of medicine are all working with us in this program. So let me I don't want to get all crazy and science propeller head, but there is an important distinction on what we're doing versus other companies in the space that also recognize the need for better molecules, better drugs. So your go-to strategy is chemistry. It's been around for hundreds of years. Everybody uses it. And chemistry is great up until you need to make some difficult chemical reactions that are maybe expensive or difficult. And then we go, and this is where we bring in the secret sauce, if you will, synthetic biology. So what that means is we go to nature. Nature makes enzymes. Enzymes do to take 20 years of research and distill it into a sentence. Enzymes make difficult chemical reactions easier to do. So we take enzymes, we take chemistry, we put them together. Now we're able to create molecules that nature never made and that chemists are not able to make. And we put all of those new drug candidates, those improved psychedelics, into a portfolio that we call the Cybrary. And by the way, I came up with that. I'm very clever, I know, psychedelics library, but I think it conveys the message, which is psychedelic-derived molecules, many, many, many new psychedelic-derived molecules, new drug candidates, plus the patents that protect them. Because this is another important thing in pharma, and in particular in the psychedelic sector, is those new molecules actually give you the opportunity for patent protection because it's a new molecule. It didn't exist in nature, as opposed to the companies that are unfortunately stuck working with the older molecules like LSD, magic mushrooms. You really can't patent those, and frankly, you shouldn't be allowed to. So why do we care about a new molecule? And so here's why. Why do we need the Cybrary? Basically, if you think about it, a drug is this molecule you're taking to make yourself better. It's like a key that you need to fit into a lock, the lock being the receptor in the body for it. And in order to get that key to fit perfectly, you have to have the teeth exactly right. And that's where the companies that are stuck working with just a small number of existing molecules have a challenge, right? If you've got to open a lock on a street and you happen to have 4 keys, what are the chances those keys are perfect? Not super high. But if you can go and modify those keys, and the way, of course, you modify a key is you change the teeth, right? You have your core key blank, and then you change the teeth. So if you can change the teeth, now you can actually design that ideal drug candidate. And so that's exactly what we do. We start with the core molecule of psilocybin, in this case, you can see on the slide, and we change the teeth, the little red letters on the outside, and we can change all those different, all these different permutations until you get the teeth that exactly fit into the receptor, exactly that lock, and that allows you to make the exact right drug that you're looking for. So the Cybrary is actually very large. We started with the psilocybin key blank, and then we're adding the mescaline, the ibogaine, and the LSD. These are all, let's say, key blanks that we're changing the teeth on that allows us to file many patents, but more importantly, to make millions or even hundreds of millions of possible new drugs. And that's a really big pile of keys to fish through. So, we're pretty excited because we think this is great. We've solved the big problem somewhere in this pile of keys. Somewhere we're going to have, exactly the right drug for each different mental health indication that we all want to target. Of course, we realized after we did that we created a new issue for ourselves. If we're going to pull that needle out of the haystack, that's going to be tricky. We need to come up with something clever. We don't want to screen 200 million different potential drugs. So that's why we have the second part of our platform, which we call Psi Ai. It means psychedelics, artificial intelligence. And the way it works is we start with the Cybrary, these new molecules that never existed before. We make several hundred of them, and we test them in a whole bunch of different locks, a whole bunch of different receptors in the body. Again, these molecules never existed before, so no one was able to test them before. And we take all that information, how do these different molecules work in the different receptors? We plug it into a proprietary artificial intelligence program that asks the question, okay, based on all of these, how should I design my next few hundred drugs, my next few hundred keys that I want to then try and run through the cycle again? Because what's my goal here? Make the best possible drug, gives you the best possible outcome for the patient with the least side effects. And then you can actually go and make them, test them, get your AI to tell you some more, make it again. You can tell that if you do just a few cycles of this, what you're going to do is rapidly narrow down to get to those ideal keys, those ideal drugs, as if you'd screened all 100 million possible drugs, but only having to screen a few hundred or a few thousand. So another benefit that comes out of this is because we're creating all these molecules and testing them on all these different receptors in the body, that's going to enable us to be much more rapid about the early parts of drug development, which typically are very time consuming. That R&D in the preclinical stage, that should move much more quickly now. And now this is new. This is, thanks again to this exciting merger with Enveric Biosciences. I mentioned before that MagicMed has never had the clinical development capabilities in-house. But now by merging with Enveric, we can actually go from research, from discovery, all the way to clinical trials, all the way through clinical trials, ultimately to new drug approval, all in one entity. So we're super excited about that transformation. So one other thing that you may have realized, we've realized it, is that between the Psi making so many potential drugs and the Psi Ai making screening much more powerful and much more rapid, that we anticipate we're going to make more high-value drug candidates than we can test even with our own internal clinical development program. And so those excess high-quality, high-value drug candidates, we intend to partner off to other companies, big biotechs, big pharmas, which of course will be a great revenue generator and a royalty down the road, but also I think a very important validation of what it is we're doing. So the management, one of the, there's so many great things about this merger, but another one is the management. Because of the complementarity between the two teams, there's really very little overlap, very little redundancy. So the new combined management team really has folks from both sides. So you see myself on the left there, Dr. Joseph Tucker, CEO, and I will be the CEO of Enveric when we combine the two companies. Dr. Peter Ficini and Dr. Jill Hagel, I've been working with them for the last 8 years. I've been myself a biotech drug developer, mostly in the CNS sector, for the last 20. But the last 8, I've been working with Peter and Jill specifically in this field of taking high-value drug candidates from plants or nature, for example, opiates, for example, cannabinoids, and now psychedelics. And we've been using synthetic biology to make better molecules. We actually had a cannabinoid company a few years ago that we took public, Willow Biosciences. You may have heard of it. And then moving on to the board, I'm not going to spend much time here, but I do want to point out that David Johnson, the current CEO of Enveric, he will be elevated to executive chair once the two companies are combined. And as I said, I will become the CEO. But the other thing that I really want you to pay attention to in the psychedelic space is it really is about drug development. It really is a pharmaceutical. And so what you need are people that are not necessarily folks that have spent 20 years experimenting with psychedelics. What you need are people that have 20, 30, 40 years of drug development, of getting things through the clinical trial process. And that's exactly what our board is comprised of. So I just want to end off by really sort of painting a picture. Where is this company going? And again, so excited about the transformation, the Enveric MagicMed combination. Now we're become really an end-to-end from discovery all the way through to approval, clinical development program with a very robust pipeline. And, that's how you have big, successful companies. Anybody can tell you take a look and say, how do you have a big, successful exit? Well, you need to have a big, robust pipeline with a lot of great data being generated. That's how you get there. That's what we're building. So in 2021, what's the combined entity? Well, of course, there's the closing, the shareholder approval that you have to go through. But, very importantly, our first clinical trial, we call EV101 in glioblastoma, our first phase 1/2, that's cannabinoid-based drug. That's going to start this year, 2021. 2022, we'll complete the enrollment on that, but we'll also add our second drug, EV102 for radiation dermatitis, another cannabinoid drug. That's going to start its phase 1/2 next year. And our first psychedelic drug, so you can see we got them both. Our first psychedelic drug is going to start lead selection in 2022. And then 2023, I think we're really going to see this pipeline start to explode. We're expecting the data readout on drug number 1, enrollment completion on drug number 2, beginning of first phase 1/2 for drug number 3, another cannabinoid-based drug for chemo-induced peripheral neuropathy. We're going to see IND-enabling studies for drug number 4, cannabinoid, drug number 5, psychedelic. Our first psychedelic and our second psychedelic will be in lead selection by 2023 as well. So you can see very quickly, what a transformation I think this has enabled us to have: psychedelics, cannabinoids, full robust clinical pipeline moving forward very quickly in the next few years. I'm super excited about it, and I hope you find it as exciting as I do. I think what I'll do there, we've just got a few minutes left. I'll stop sharing my screen, and I would be very happy to, if I can, I'd be very happy to address any questions. Thank you.
Dr. Tucker, that was fantastic. Super interesting. Congratulations to you and the whole MagicMed team on the Inveric or Inverich?
Inveric with a
Inveric. I've been going back and forth myself. So thank you for clearing that up. Inveric, ENVB, the proposed CEO, Dr. Tucker, current CEO of MagicMed. I'm curious, maybe if you could help me on a broad scale here, because I think a lot of our investors are probably a little newer to psychedelics. So if they're considering investing in a company that has psychedelics activations, what do you tell them? What do you tell them to look for in that company? Obviously, I think you were talking about patents, R&D, drug development, things of that nature. But what should they specifically be looking for when they do their research and due diligence?
Yeah. Awesome question, Elliot. I really think there's two things that an investor should be paying attention to in this space. For the classic psychedelics, psilocybin and LSD and those kinds of things, I think there's really only a first mover advantage. I think if you're not one of those first few companies, you're at great risk. Again, with the classic psychedelics, and it's because of the inability, honestly, to put patents on those molecules. So it's going to be heavily weighted towards first mover. I think the second thing to look for is, as this industry is maturing, which it is doing very rapidly, the investor base is shifting. So initially, a ton of retail investors, in particular in Canada. And what we're seeing right now is, I think, a very powerful shift. We've seen it reflected in the market towards sophisticated life science investors who recognize that this is a pharmaceutical play. And that's why you see this great desire to move to the NASDAQ. That's how you get the attention and the focus of the sophisticated life science investors. There's two right now, psychedelics companies on the NASDAQ. Mm-hmm. With Inveric, we will now be in a very small group of psychedelics companies listed on the NASDAQ. And that's, you got to get the sophisticated investors paying attention to you, and you got to have patentability for that second wave. That's what I would be looking for as an investor.
That was wonderful. Honestly, it helps me because I am currently invested in some psychedelics companies. So it definitely changes emphasizes what I should be looking at, we'll say. We are about at time, but you're going to be joining us on a panel a little bit later today discussing psychedelics within the public markets. So I think, please, we'll continue that conversation there. It's a wonderful panel. Looking forward to having you back, Dr. Tucker.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Elliot.
Thank you. Fantastic, y'all. Incredible presentation. Very excited to hear more about the psychedelics investing, about investing within psychedelics.